When the evening sun began to fall over the small town, the air carried the smell of earth and old memories. In that quiet house on the corner of an unpaved street lived a woman named Sofia, who had given everything to raise her only son Daniel. She had lost her husband when Daniel was only 6, and from that day her life had become a long series of sacrifices. She worked in other people's houses, washing, cooking, cleaning, smiling through pain and pretending she never felt tired because Daniel was her reason to keep breathing. She used to whisper to herself that one day her son would become someone great and all her suffering would fade into pride. Daniel grew up with love surrounding him like a soft blanket. His mother never let him feel the absence of a father. She told him stories every night, sometimes of angels, sometimes of dreams that could become real if one never stopped believing in kindness. Daniel listened with shining eyes and promised her he would always take care of her. When he grew older, life moved faster than either of them expected, and Daniel soon found himself in the city, studying, working, building his own future. Sofia stayed behind in the same small town, her hair turning gray, her back bending a little more each year, but her heart remained the same, full of prayers for her son. One day Daniel called her and said, "Mother, I have met someone. Her name is Rachel. She is beautiful, she is smart, she understands me." Sofia felt her heart warm with joy. She asked to hear more, and Daniel told her how Rachel had changed his world, how she made him laugh, how she made him want to do better. Sofia thanked God that her son had found love. After all, her wishes were for his happiness, but deep inside a faint unease began to grow. Something about the tone of his voice, something she could not name. Months passed and Daniel married Rachel. The wedding was small, elegant, held in the city where they both lived. Sofia watched through video call because Daniel said travel would be too difficult for her. She smiled though tears filled her eyes. She told herself that this was fine, that all that mattered was her son's happiness. After the wedding, Daniel's calls became shorter, his visits rarer. Sofia kept waiting. Every weekend she cooked his favorite food, hoping he might surprise her. She sat by the window watching the dusty road that led to her gate, sometimes until the sun went down and the stars came out. She whispered his name under her breath, praying he would appear one day. Daniel finally visited, but he came alone. His face looked pale, his eyes tired. Sofia hugged him tightly and asked what was wrong. He smiled weakly and said, "Nothing, mother, just tired from work," but she could see the heaviness in his heart. She cooked for him, she listened when he spoke. Little fragments of his married life slipped out. Rachel was not happy with his long hours. She wanted a bigger house, more money, more things. Sofia kept silent. She only said, "Son, love needs patience and giving, not just taking." Daniel nodded, but his eyes drifted away like he was somewhere far. Sofia prayed every night for peace in her son's home, but slowly she began to feel the distance, not just physical but emotional. Whenever she called, Rachel would answer curtly, saying Daniel was busy. Sofia always spoke gently, hoping to bridge the gap, but Rachel's words were sharp, wrapped in polite tones that hid coldness. Daniel changed too. He started sounding unsure, sometimes even fearful. Sofia sensed that something unseen was wrapping around her son's life like dark smoke. She tried to visit, but Rachel said it was not a good time, always some excuse, always some reason. Sofia decided to wait, but her heart felt restless. One day late at night, Daniel called. She could hear tremor in his voice. He said, "Mother, can I come stay with you for a few days?" She said, "Of course, my son, my door is always open." When he arrived, she was shocked. He had lost weight, his eyes had dark circles, he looked like someone who had not slept for weeks. She held his face in her hands and whispered, "What happened?" Daniel hesitated, then broke down crying. He said, "Mother, Rachel fights all the time. She says I am a failure. She says you are poison in my life. She wants me to sell this house and move away. She controls everything, even my phone, my accounts. She gets angry if I speak to you." Sofia felt a stab in her chest. She wanted to shout, but she stayed calm. She said, "My son, you need rest, eat, sleep. We will talk tomorrow." That night she stayed awake, listening to his breathing as he slept like a broken child. The next morning she made his favorite breakfast. He smiled faintly for the first time in months, but before the day ended, Rachel called, her voice angry and loud. Sofia could hear her shouting. Even though Daniel tried to calm her, Rachel accused Sofia of turning him against her. She said, "Your mother wants to ruin our marriage." Daniel looked helpless. Sofia kept silent. She said only, "Rachel, I love my son. I want him happy. Please take care of him." Rachel hung up without a word. Daniel was torn between guilt and confusion. Sofia knew her words would mean nothing now. Rachel's anger grew each day. She started sending messages threatening to take Daniel away forever, saying she would destroy him if he chose his mother over her. One evening Daniel disappeared. Sofia called every hospital, every friend she could think of. 2 days later she received a call from the police. They had found Daniel unconscious near a bridge. Apparently he had tried to end his life. Sofia's heart shattered. She rushed to the city. He was alive but barely breathing. When he opened his eyes and saw her, he wept, saying, "Mother, I am sorry. I thought I was strong, but I broke." Sofia held his hand and whispered, "My son, no pain is greater than the loss of hope. We will start again together. From now on you will never be alone." Rachel came to the hospital, her face expressionless. She said, "I didn't did not mean for this to happen. Sofia looked at her and said quietly, you hurt him because you never learned what love is. Rachel turned away, saying he was weak. Sofia stood there watching her leave with tears burning her eyes. She realized that to save her son she had to fight not with anger but with love. She took Daniel back home. She nursed him back to health. She spoke softly to him. She told him stories like she used to when he was a boy. She reminded him of who he was. Slowly his laughter returned, faint but real. One night as they sat by the old lamp, Daniel said, Mother, I want to live here for a while, maybe forever. Sofia smiled, saying, my son, this house will always be yours. Rachel kept calling, but Daniel did not answer. Months passed. Peace began to return until one day Rachel arrived unannounced. Her eyes looked different, softer, maybe regretful. She said, I want to talk. Daniel hesitated, but Sofia nodded and left them alone. Rachel cried, saying, I was wrong. I was jealous. I felt you loved your mother more than me. I forgot. Love is not a competition. Daniel said, love should make us better, not destroy us. Sofia listened quietly from the next room. She prayed for forgiveness and healing for all three of them. After that, Rachel began visiting, sometimes helping Sofia in the kitchen, sometimes sitting quietly in the garden. Things were fragile, but healing had begun. Sofia often sat alone at night, looking at the stars, whispering, thank you, God, for giving me strength, for saving my son from darkness. She knew the battle was not only with Rachel but with the pain, the confusion, the loneliness that life throws at every heart. She realized a mother's love is not just soft, it can be fierce. It can pull someone out of fire without shouting, without fighting, just by holding on when everyone else lets go. And so the days turned into years. Daniel built a small workshop near the house. Rachel helped sometimes, and Sofia watched them with a gentle smile. She had saved her son not by tearing anyone apart but by reminding him of the light he had forgotten, and that light was love itself. Thanking God that her son was alive, she did not ask for wealth or comfort, only for strength to keep loving without bitterness. Rachel came often now, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes helping with laundry. She tried in her own way to rebuild the bridge she had burned. Sofia welcomed her not because she forgot the pain but because she believed forgiveness was the only path forward. Rachel often watched Sofia with quiet eyes, maybe wondering how this old woman still had so much patience. One evening as they all sat around the table, Daniel said softly, Mother, do you think people can change? Sofia smiled and said, my son, hearts can change if they want to love again. Pain can make us cruel or kind. The choice is always ours. Rachel lowered her head, tears glistening in her eyes. She whispered, I want to change. I never understood love before. I only wanted control because I was afraid to lose it. Sofia reached across the table, held her hand and said, love grows only when we stop trying to own it. Rachel began to cry openly. Daniel moved closer and wrapped his arms around her. That moment felt like the first real breath after a long storm. From that day, something inside the house began to shift. Laughter returned, simple laughter that echoed through the walls. Sofia spent her mornings tending the garden. She planted roses and jasmine, the air filled with sweetness. Daniel started teaching carpentry to local children. He said he wanted them to have skills that would make them independent. He often told them stories about his mother, about how love can build strength stronger than any wall. Rachel began volunteering at the nearby clinic, helping women who came with bruises on their hearts. She listened to their stories and saw herself in their pain. She told them that kindness could rebuild even the most shattered life. She was healing too. One afternoon, Sofia found an old photo of Daniel as a child sitting in his father's lap. She looked at it for a long time. Her husband had been kind, gentle and brave. She whispered, I did what you would have done, my love. I kept him safe. She placed the photo on the table beside Daniel's wedding picture, the two frames side by side like past and present shaking hands. Time kept moving, seasons changed, the trees grew thicker, their roots stronger, just like their hearts. Yet life has its way of testing peace. One morning, Daniel received a letter from the city, a business proposal, an offer to open a new branch of his workshop. It was a big opportunity, but it meant moving back to the city for at least a year. Daniel hesitated. He wanted to stay near his mother. Sofia saw the conflict in his eyes and said, my son, you cannot live only to protect me. Go chase your dreams. I am old but not alone. I have faith you will return. Daniel hugged her and said, I cannot leave you again, mother. Sofia smiled and said, if you love me, then live fully. Do not let fear become your cage. Rachel supported him. She said, we can go together and visit often. Sofia nodded, though her heart ached. She knew love must not become a chain. A few weeks later, they packed their bags. The morning they left, Sofia stood at the gate waving as the truck drove away. The dust rose like golden smoke around her. She whispered, may God protect you both. The house felt emptier than ever before, but she filled the silence with prayer and work. She helped neighbors, taught little girls how to read. She wrote letters to Daniel every week, her words filled with warmth and guidance. Daniel replied, telling her about the new workshop, how business was growing, how Rachel Daniel was managing finances, how they had rented a small apartment with a garden balcony where they planted jasmine like the ones back home. Sofia read his letters again and again. Sometimes tears blurred the ink. Months turned into a year. Daniel finally called saying, "Mother, we are coming home. We have missed you." Sofia felt her heart leap. She cooked for 2 days, preparing all his favorite dishes. When they arrived, she saw them stepping out of the car hand in hand, and she knew something had changed. They both looked stronger, calmer, more at peace. Daniel lifted her in his arms, laughing like a child. She laughed too, the sound echoing through the yard. They ate together, talked for hours under the moonlight. Sofia listened to their stories of struggle and success with pride. Later that night, as she lay in bed, she whispered, "Thank you, God, for this day, for this peace, for this family." But peace is never permanent. It needs care like a garden, and sometimes storms come to test its roots. A few months later, Rachel's past came knocking. Her estranged brother appeared at their door asking for money. Daniel tried to help, but the man demanded more, threatened to expose old secrets, debts, unpaid favors owed. Rachel trembled with fear. Daniel stood firm, saying, "We will not be blackmailed," but the man's words poisoned the air. He accused Rachel of things she had done before marriage, small mistakes but painful to recall. Daniel looked at her in shock. Rachel ran out crying. Sofia followed, found her by the river, trembling. Rachel said, "I have ruined everything again." Sofia sat beside her, saying, "No, child, you have not ruined anything. Truth does not destroy love, it only purifies it." Rachel said, "You do not understand. I lied to Daniel. I told him my family was dead. I was ashamed of my past." Sofia looked into her eyes and said, "Shame is a cage and love is the key. Tell him everything before someone else does." That night, Rachel confessed to Daniel. He was silent for a long time, then said, "I wish you had trusted me earlier, but I understand fear." Daniel held her hand and said, "We start again tomorrow. We build from truth, not lies." Sofia felt proud watching them grow through pain. She knew life would never stop testing them, but she also knew love, when nurtured with forgiveness, becomes unbreakable. She prayed that night under the quiet stars, her voice trembling with gratitude. The next morning, Daniel walked to her and said, "Mother, I realize something. Every time I fall, you are there to lift me." Sofia smiled and said, "Every mother is a bridge between pain and peace, my son, and one day when I am gone, you will understand that love never leaves, it only changes form." Daniel hugged her tightly, whispering, "I already know." The days that followed were filled with quiet understanding between them. Daniel, Rachel, and Sofia lived together like three souls, bound not by perfection but by forgiveness. Their mornings began with the sound of birds and the soft clinking of dishes as Sofia brewed tea, the smell of cardamom filling the air. Daniel would step out into the yard, stretching his arms to the sun. Rachel would water the plants, humming softly. Life had found a gentle rhythm again, yet beneath that peace, Sofia felt time brushing against her heart. She had grown weaker, her hands shook a little more each day. She tried to hide it from them, but Daniel noticed. He began insisting that she rest more often. She would laugh, saying old age is a blessing, not a disease. Still, he watched her closely. One evening she fainted while cooking. The sound of the pan falling made Daniel and Rachel rush into the kitchen. They carried her to bed, Daniel's face pale with fear. Sofia opened her eyes and whispered, "I am fine, my son, just a little dizzy." But inside, Daniel knew it was not fine. The next morning he took her to the city hospital. The doctors said her heart was tired, nothing severe yet, but she needed care, rest, and medicine. Sofia smiled gently and said, "The heart grows tired when it has carried love for too long." Daniel held her hand, promising he would never leave her alone again. Rachel sat by her side, tears in her eyes, whispering, "You are my mother too now." Sofia reached out and touched her cheek, saying, "Then promise me you will never let him walk in darkness again." Rachel nodded. From that day they both took turns caring for her. Daniel built a small room beside the garden so she could sit and watch the flowers. Rachel cooked her meals with care. Sofia would often tell them stories from her youth, tales of struggle, of hope, of her late husband's laughter. Those evenings glowed with warmth, but the shadow of time never stops moving. One night Sofia called Daniel to her side. She said, "My son, when I am gone, remember to keep this house filled with love, not silence. Promise me." Daniel shook his head, refusing to imagine life without her. She smiled, saying, "Death is not an end, it is a return to the one who made us." Daniel cried, saying, "I cannot lose you." She whispered, "You never will, for I will live inside the kindness you give to others." She closed her eyes and rested. Daniel sat there holding her hand through the night. In the morning she was gone. The sun rose, painting the sky in gold, but Daniel felt only the hollow ache of loss. The house was filled with stillness. Rachel stood beside him, holding his arm, whispering, "She left in peace." Daniel buried her under the jasmine tree she had planted. He placed a stone there carved with the words, "Her love was our light." Weeks passed, but the silence felt heavy. Daniel could not work. He would sit by the grave for hours. Rachel tried to comfort him, but grief is a language no one else can translate. One evening she found him sitting there talking softly to the grave. He said, "I remember how you saved me, mother, not just from Rachel, not just from pain, but from myself. You taught me that love does not mean control. It means letting go when needed and holding on when everything breaks. Rachel listened quietly, then knelt beside him, saying she saved us both. Daniel looked at her, eyes full of tears. He said, I was blind to your pain too. We both hurt each other, but she showed us how to heal. Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time since the funeral, Daniel smiled faintly. Time moved again. Days turned into months. Daniel poured his grief into work, building furniture that carried the beauty of simplicity. Each piece, carved with care, became a tribute to his mother. Rachel started teaching children at the local school. She often told them stories of Sofia, the woman who healed with love. People in the town began calling their home the House of Kindness because anyone who came there left with warmth in their heart. One rainy evening, Daniel found an old box in Sofia's cupboard. Inside were letters she had written but never sent. One of them was addressed to him. He opened it, his hands trembling. The letter read, My dear son, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer beside you, but do not let sorrow chain you to yesterday. Life is a river, it must keep flowing. Remember that forgiveness is the highest form of strength, and love is the light that will guide you home. Daniel read it again and again, his tears falling on the paper. He felt her presence around him like a soft wind. He whispered, I will make you proud, mother. That night he sat by the window watching the rain, the scent of wet earth reminding him of his childhood. Rachel joined him. They sat in silence, hands entwined. Daniel said, she saved me once, I will now save others. Inspired by her, he began a foundation for families in crisis, offering counseling and support for men and women trapped in toxic relationships. He named it the Sofia Trust. Rachel worked with him. Their story became a beacon for others. People came to them broken and left with hope. Years passed. The foundation grew, known across towns and cities. Daniel and Rachel aged together with grace. They never forgot the woman who had taught them love without limits. Every anniversary of her passing, they decorated the jasmine tree with candles and flowers. One night, as Daniel sat under it, feeling the soft breeze, he closed his eyes and whispered, I can still feel you, mother. The wind rustled the leaves as if answering his call. Rachel came out with 2 cups of tea, sat beside him. She said, do you think she can see us? Daniel smiled, saying, she never left. She lives in every act of kindness we do. Rachel nodded, saying she was the real strength behind us, always will be. They sat there watching the stars just like Sofia once did. The night felt endless and peaceful. In that silence, Daniel realized something. His mother had not just saved him from his wife, she had saved him from bitterness, from losing himself to darkness. She had shown him that love is not about winning or losing, but about healing and giving the world a piece of your light. As he looked at the sky, he whispered, thank you, mother, I finally understand. Years had passed and the town had changed, but the house on the corner remained the same, standing quiet beneath the wide sky, its walls carrying whispers of laughter, tears, and prayers. Daniel had grown older, his hair touched with gray, his face lined with years of work and love. Rachel too had softened into wisdom, her eyes still bright with the fire of purpose. Every morning they still walked through the garden where jasmine bloomed endlessly, the same flowers Sofia had planted decades ago. Their fragrance filled the air with memory. The foundation they had started kept growing. It helped thousands across the country. People wrote letters, stories of how they found strength again through the message of love, forgiveness, and understanding. Daniel often spoke at gatherings, his voice calm, his words carrying truth. He would say, I was once broken, but my mother taught me that love does not rescue by fighting, it rescues by believing. When the heart is pure, nothing is truly lost. People would listen with tears in their eyes. Sometimes after his talks, strangers would come and touch his hands, thanking him, saying, your mother's story gave us courage. He would smile humbly and say, I only carry her light, I am not the light itself. One day an old woman came to meet him. Her son had left her years ago and she had lost all hope. Daniel listened to her story and told her softly, my mother once waited by a window every evening, believing her son would come home one day, and I did so. Never stop waiting with faith. She cried and said, you have given me peace. He watched her leave, feeling Sofia's presence again around him like the scent of jasmine at dusk. Life continued in its gentle rhythm. Rachel's health began to fade with time. Age touched her bones with quiet tenderness. One night as she lay beside him, she whispered, Daniel, if one of us leaves first, promise we will meet under that jasmine tree where your mother sleeps. Daniel smiled through tears, saying, that is where love begins and ends. Rachel closed her eyes, whispering, then I am not afraid. Seasons changed again. The world outside grew busier, faster, but inside their home time moved slowly, peacefully. One evening as Daniel sat writing by the window, he heard laughter from the children playing outside. He smiled, thinking of the circle of life, how everything begins in innocence and returns to it in the end. He stood, walked to the garden, touched the jasmine leaves and felt the cool breeze across his face. He closed his eyes and spoke softly, "Mother, if you can hear me, know that I have lived by your words. I have loved truly. I have forgiven freely. I have protected life where I once only wanted to escape it. You saved me, and I have tried to pass that light to others. Thank you for giving me a second life and teaching me that love never dies, only transforms." In that moment he felt warmth on his shoulder, like a hand, gentle and visible. The wind moved through the branches, the flowers swayed softly. He whispered, "I know you are here." When Rachel passed years later, Daniel buried her beside his mother under the same tree. He carved their names together on the stone, Sofia and Rachel, two women who shaped his destiny, one with her endless patience and one with her imperfect love, both teaching him what the heart was meant for. Daniel lived on, quietly tending the garden, teaching children, repairing old furniture for free for those who could not pay. He had no need for wealth anymore. His home was enough, his memories enough. Sometimes he would sit by the river, watching the reflection of the sky, and whisper to himself, "I am not alone." He died one evening, peacefully sitting under the jasmine tree, a smile on his face. They found him with a notebook on his lap. Inside were words written in shaky letters: "Love saved me twice, once through the hands that gave me life, and once through the heart that learned to love again after pain." Years later, the house became a small museum. People visited to see the place where the Sofia Trust was born. They saw her photographs, the letters she had written, the garden where jasmine still bloomed stronger than ever. Mothers brought their children there, telling them this is where love became strength. Daniel's story became part of local legend, a tale not about heroism but about healing. The guide would often end the tour by saying, "Sofia saved her son from his wife not by hate but by love. She saved him from despair and from himself, and in doing so she saved generations of hearts who came to learn from her life." The wind would carry the scent of jasmine across the courtyard as if she were still there, listening, watching, blessing every soul who entered that place. At sunset, the light would turn golden and fall upon her grave gently, and if one stood there in silence, they could almost hear a whisper in the air saying, "Love never fails, love never ends, love only changes form and keeps living in those who remember."